Welcome to the FMI Lab. I'm Doug Baker, and today I'm joined by Tom Furphy. Tom is the founding advisor of GroceryLab. Tom's company, Consumer Equity Partners, is a venture capital firm that invests in retail and commerce technology, building the companies that aim to drive the next generation of retail, marketing, and e-commerce. They operate out of Seattle, Washington, and Scottsdale, Arizona. Thanks for being with us, Tom.
Thanks for having me, Doug. It's such a pleasure to be here. I really love what FMI is doing with this FMI Lab Series. You guys have been so great at providing resources to the industry, as we deal with this dynamic consumer and competitive dynamics. And this is such an important resource that you guys provide, and I'm thrilled that you've invited me in.
You started your career at Wegmans, and then from there you moved on to Amazon to launch its online grocery business. And I love that, man, I wish I could have this cool nickname. You became Mr. Omnichannel. And that's so cool. Um, so think about it. Given both aspects of your experience, do you and your household prefer in-store, online, or both, and why?
All right, I love it, Mr. Omnichannel. That's funny. Um, yeah, no, I think that, if you think about it over the last, 20 years, our family has absolutely migrated to much more online purchasing. And I would argue that, we probably have an Amazon package that arrives pretty much daily. And I think, you and the viewers will know that, you'll see in your own neighborhoods, right, the Amazon trucks driving by probably every couple hours, right? So it's just become such a key part of how we shop. Um, but I will say, there's nothing like a good trip to a great grocery store. And, that is absolutely still very much a part of how we shop multiple times a week. We're going into the store. We're enjoying and taking in what the store offers us as far as, particularly quality perishables, meat, seafood, produce, bakery. That's just stuff you really can't experience online. You can procure it, sure, but you really can't experience. You can't be inspired. And we really do believe in and benefit from the inspiration that a trip to the store gives us.
With Consumer Equity Partners, you're piloting an industry specific investment fund to support tech investment. Talk to us about the pace at which technology based partnerships are developing and the pace at which they're failing. And what are those underlying factors that lead to these partnerships succeeding or failing in your perspective?
That's a great question, and a very important question. The way I think about, the way that they approach partnerships is kind of on two different levels. One, you're seeing a lot of partnering with the larger platforms like Google, Microsoft, Fusion, Commerce Tools, Instacart, right? These larger, retail commerce platforms and enablers. And it's really important for retailers to do that so that they have these large, stable partners with modern technology and platforms that can help them evolve, as they go forward. So that's really key. The challenge there, though, is that these large platforms don't innovate at the pace that startups innovate. And the platforms will admit that. They're big, stable. It's hard for them to innovate at the level of speed that can be done. So, we're seeing most innovation come from startups in areas such as agentic shopping, robotics, computer vision, spatial intelligence, media data, advanced analytics, right? That's all coming from the startup ecosystem. But what becomes challenging in dealing with these startups is that they're often, by their nature, they're startups, they're small, they're emerging. They tend to not be very well funded. They tend to agree to do anything to please the retailer. So they're super hungry to say, yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. So then they often end up, engaging in pilots with retailers that, can be maybe not so well defined, not so well underwritten, and often end up going on too long and kind of languishing. And, so you're really, you know, falling short of what that partnership and what those pilots could mean in in solving the objectives of the retailer, and then ultimately often leaves these startups in a position where, they're they're stretched, and underfunded and not advancing well enough to be able to attract additional capital. And the challenge that you end up with here then is, the retailers that are engaging with these startups, for every 2 or 3 pilots they can run, the big guys are running 20 pilots each. And it's just this gap between, the super innovators and the rest of the industry just continues to widen.
Tom, Consumer Equity Partners is breaking the mold in terms of technology investment in the food industry as a first of its kind investment model. Can you tell us why you chose this model and why now?
Yeah, and it's been a journey to getting to this model. So CEP's been at it for a little bit over a decade with a traditional venture capital model where we invest outside capital, into startups and work with them to scale within the industry. And we've had very good success as an early stage venture fund. So, if you look at kind of our performance generally as a VC, it's been very good. However, recently we're finding, and really because of what I'd call, the broken innovation model in the industry, traditional venture capital has been kind of turning away from our industry. And if you look at the statistics, the amount of venture capital coming into our space is about 75% below where it was at its peak. So we approached this to kind of flip the model around and put the retailers in the center, right? So what our model does is pools capital from industry retailers into a fund that goes out and sources the top innovations from all around the world. And these are innovations that are both informed by retailers' existing strategies, but also the very emergence of these capabilities can also help inform where retailers may take their strategies. We've built a very deeply experienced team that vets these technologies. We share these technologies with our retailer investors. The most promising technologies get funded, and our retailers get to then run structured, underwritten, funded pilots. And that significantly changes or improves that breakpoint that exists today. And all of our retailers, whether they're running the pilot or not, they get the advantage or the benefit of the intelligence that comes out of the pilot, so they can assess these technologies within their strategic frameworks to determine if they want to roll them out. And ultimately, then the startups come out of this better funded with a better chance to be a good partner for these retailers as they scale. So the net of it is that it lowers risk and increases speed for the retailers while also giving them equity upside in the success of the startup. And it also provides an innovation feeder to the larger tech platforms. So we also partner with the larger tech platforms, and they see this innovation coming up, and then they can be actually an exit for these, where they either develop long-term partnership strategies with the startups, or they, ultimately can engage in M&A with them. And I think one thing that is really key from our model is the traditional venture capital community is embracing it. They have said, if this is truly able to unlock and solve the challenge that we've had, our capital will come back into your industry. So there's a multiplier effect. And we're also confident that the retailers that adopt this model will ultimately separate them from the retailers that don't.
Well, I think it fits the mission. And FMI's mission is how do we continue to help our members look up and out, and to an extent democratize the need, no matter where you're at in your journey. And we believe that your model actually continues to fit that mission. So best of luck with that. We're with you on that.
Thank you.
Tom, so you're an advisor for GroceryLab. Thank you. Appreciate your insights on that. At our first ever event, though, attendees are going to dive into 7 distinct labs. You've been helping to construct the lab focused on AI and data harmonization, and you've been doing work around that, the daunting data dilemma. So how do you think GroceryLab, and this lab in particular, is positioned to help the industry with their daunting data dilemma?
So I think GroceryLab is going to absolutely be a home run in helping retailers think about how they need to change their organizations and their go-to-market approach to more effectively compete, today and into the future as it gets tougher. This is going to be, a hands-on, effort that takes people out of their comfort zones and really fosters collaboration among the retail teams. And I think this is a new experience for this kind of thing happening in the industry, and I think it's going to be pretty awesome. I'm particularly excited to be partnering with Tom Henry from Schnucks and leading the data and the AI and data harmonization lab. Having good, clean data is foundational and it's imperative if an organization is to employ and leverage AI. I love that our lab is the one lab that all attendees will take together as a foundation of what they'll learn in their own labs. I'm also excited because this lab dovetails so nicely into our work in solving the industry's daunting data dilemma. We've heard loud and clear through that effort that our industry and people in our industry are struggling both internally in their own companies and across trading partners, just with foundational data, standards, definitions. I think our industry task force is going to make great strides in addressing that dilemma, in introducing frameworks and standards. But I think that bringing that challenge and thoughtful approaches to that challenge into GroceryLab, is going to be really important. So, at GroceryLab, we're going to really bring home the need for a strong foundation with clean and harmonized data as a basis for deploying AI and capabilities necessary to build your organization of the future. And this won't just be theoretical. We plan to offer practical steps that retailers at any point on the spectrum, on the data readiness spectrum, can pursue. And I think, ultimately, I'd call GroceryLab a must attend for retailers. I don't know how you could let this opportunity pass without diving in.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and again, thank you for your leadership and enthusiasm for this event. We're looking forward to if we're moving some cheese on some people, and quite frankly, that's the world we live in today in this industry. A lot of that is driven because technology is permeating throughout. It continues to move our cheese, so we've got to look at it differently, and hopefully, this event helps people do that.
Absolutely.
Tom, thanks so much for being with us today, and look forward to seeing you in Detroit, if not sooner, for GroceryLab. For anybody that's interested in more about the AI and data harmonization or the daunting data dilemma, make sure you're at GroceryLab in June, and you can learn more about GroceryLab on fmi.org GroceryLab. Thank you.